the record button. So again, this time at 7:07 p.m., we're going to bring to order the regularly scheduled Charter Township of Orion Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, scheduled this date 7 minutes ago. Please call the roll.
Dan Durham.
Here.
John Walker.
Here.
Mike Flood.
Here.
Tony Cook, absent with notice. Diane Danaskis.
Here.
Tony Kirby.
Here.
Joanne Van Tassel.
Here.
Thank you. Next up, we have the meeting, or the minutes rather, from our August 8th meeting of 2022. Mr. Flood.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the August 8th, 2022 ZBA minutes as presented.
Mr. Chair, I support.
We have a motion by Mr. Flood, supported by Mrs. Danaskis. Anything from the board? If not, please call the roll.
Diane Danaskis.
Yes.
Tony Kirby.
Yes.
John Walker.
Yes.
Mike Flood.
Yes.
Dan Durham.
Yes, thank you. Before we go any further, before we go into tonight's agenda, I have heard possible information that we may have a case postponed. Do we know if that's true? That is true. Okay, that being the case, I'm going to ask the board in their approval of tonight's agenda to roll case number 2022-36 from the bottom of the agenda to the top. If someone would be so inclined, if anybody has any discussion, we can do that too.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Flood.
I would move to approve the agenda as amended.
Support. We have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Okay. So the next case, the first case up will be AB 2022-36. And Mrs. Danaskis is arranged in advance to recuse herself because of a possible appearance of conflict of interest. So she will be sitting this one out. Before we get started, these cases tonight, some of them have multiple people here for basically the same case. I'm going to be holding strict to the letter of our bylaws as far as public comment goes. Public comment is going to be limited to 3 minutes unless you are a petitioner. Petitioner will come up and they'll stay hopefully until the board finishes with their questioning. Anybody in the public will have 3 minutes by this watch. At the end of that 3 minutes, I will tell you thank you for your input. At that time, you'll be surrendering the mic and you will get one trip up. So if you are thinking about public comment, please get it lined up what you want to say because you'll have 3 minutes to say it. Thank you. And we will go ahead with case AB. Well, no, actually, we don't even need to open it, do we? We can just, if we're so in agreement, why don't we get a petitioner up? Mr. Chairman? Yes. Well, that's number 2 on the agenda now. That'll be the next thing we hit. I just didn't know which one was football. Thank you. Okay. Come on up, gentlemen. I don't want to even open the door on your case if you're going to postpone. That is your wish?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and you're representing the property owners next to you?
Yes.
Okay. Have you arranged previously for a date certain to come back?
We did today, and it sounds like we can be postponed to come back on September 26th.
Okay. All right, beyond that, as I say, I don't want to open the door. There's no reason to. We've heard from the petitioner that they wish to postpone until a date certain on the 26th. Do any of the board members have any questions of these folks?
Where's my deed certain thing here? Make a motion on that.
If not, we will entertain a motion.
September 26th, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that in case of AB 2022-36, Matt Danaskis and Pete and Nancy Similek, vacant parcel number 2, parcel south of 576 Cushing Street, civil number 0903-278-027. The petitioners asked request to postpone until September 26, 2022.
Thank you. I'll support. Anything additional from the board? We have a motion by Mr. Flood, supported by myself, to postpone this case at the petitioner's request until the 26th of September. Please call the roll.
Tony Kirby?
Yes.
Mike Flood?
Yes.
Joanne Van Tassel?
Yes.
Don Walker?
Just a question, is it September 26th or
Yes.
October
Yeah.
26th?
September.
Oh, I thought he said October, but
I believe I said
is it
September, didn't
September? Okay,
2 weeks from now, they said.
yes, whatever the motion
Dan
is,
Durham.
yes, then, yes.
Yes. Motion passes. You are postponed. We'll see you in September. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have,
Ms. Danaskis come back now?
yes, she certainly can. I'm sorry.
Joanna, it was nice seeing you today.
Nice doing business with you folks. Have a good time and
See you on the 26th,
Yeah.
back sooner.
see you in a month.
Did you leave the car running, Joanne?
What?
Did you leave the car running?
No, no.
Okay, we let the record reflect, we have Mr. Danaskis back with us. Next case is AB 2022-23, Tracy Guyana at 1150 Hemingway, Sidwell 09-15-201-028. We have information in our packet that the petitioner is requesting a date, I believe they've got the 24th of October.
Yes.
They're asking to be postponed. They had health issues that required, or did not allow them to come in tonight. Does the board, any board member have any issue with pushing this case back to October? If not, and no discussion, we can entertain a motion to that effect.
Mr. Chair,
Excuse me one moment before we have a motion. Sir, were you wanting to speak to this? I was, just briefly. Please come up. Come up, introduce yourself.
My name is David Plunkett. I'm with the law firm Williams, Ratner, and Plunkett in Birmingham, and I represent Tom Williams, who owns one of the adjoining properties as well as 3 other surrounding properties. I understand people have health issues. This is extremely frustrating. The last time we were here, my client had to pay for me to come out here. The applicant had messed up the application or the way it had been advertised, and so it was a waste of time. Now I come out here, all the while she gets to keep this fence up that is in blatant violation of the zoning ordinance. A portion of it, as I've put in my letters to the board, is actually on my client's property, needs to be removed. We've asked them to have it removed. I understand things happen. It's just getting not only just a little frustrating, it's a little strange that it just keeps getting postponed. I'm not saying from the board's perspective, from my client's perspective, he's got a fence sitting on his property, not just in violation of the zoning ordinance. And now we got to go 2 more months out where he just has to not only waste more money with me, it's just frustrating. The board should do what it's going to do, but it's very frustrating and costly. And again, we need to have the fence removed from the property. And we've obviously been waiting to see what the board was going to do before we took further action. I don't know if my client's going to want to file a lawsuit about it. We were trying not to go that way, but that's my concern.
Well, whether or not to allow postponement is at the discretion of the board under our bylaws.
I understand.
And with the information that they sent in, I would have been uncomfortable if they hadn't postponed. That's just one man's speaking.
Fair enough. And I obviously don't know the facts. I just needed to say this.
And our next step is, since the board has voted to allow the postponement, I believe there'll be a come to reckoning on the October date. Because you're right, that will be to the one time that it was pushed back and now this. But I didn't anticipate this. I don't know that they did either. Maybe they did. You believe you know them better than I do.
Oh, I don't. I'm just, it's obviously I've been driving out here and getting paid, and it's just frustrating, particularly with it on my client's property.
Understood.
Okay.
But we have voted to postpone.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
One thing I'd like to comment on that. If it finds that it's not compliant, it will ask to cut down to 4 feet before we ask to remove it. We will probably start that process prior to that, just so we're ready to go with it if this board doesn't seem inclined to approve it. But we will ask to cut it down to 4 feet, not remove it, just so you know. That would be to bring it in compliance with the ordinance. The property line dispute would obviously be still a matter that we wouldn't get involved.
If I would understand correct, that if you were inclined to not grant the variance, the instruction would be to cut it down, and then I didn't catch the last part.
Be cut down to 4 foot.
I understand that. I didn't understand the last part about the property dispute.
That would be between the two property owners.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Still need a motion.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
in the case of AB 2022-23 Tracy Gianna, 1150 Hemingway, 09 Sidwell, 0915-201-028, I move that their case be postponed due to health issues until October 24th, 2022.
Support?
Motion by Mrs. Danaskis and support by Mr. Kirby. Any further discussion by the board? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Tony Kirby?
Yes.
Diane Danaskas?
Yes.
Don Walker?
Yes.
Mike Flood?
Yes.
Dan Durham?
Yes. The matter has been postponed for what I certainly hope to be the last time. Next up, we have case AB 2022-25, Armando Vuctalai at 2005 Bald Mountain Road, Sidwell, 09-24-100-207. This is a case that was postponed from the July 25th meeting. The petitioner is seeking 5 variances from zoning ordinance 78, zoned R1, Article 27, Section 27.02A4, and Article 27, Section 27.05H2. Number 1, 40-foot front yard setback variance from the required 40 feet to erect a 6-foot privacy fence 0 feet from the road right-of-way line along Bald Mountain to the west. Number 2 is a 37-foot front yard setback variance from the required 40 feet to erect a 6-foot privacy fence 3 feet from the front property line north along Starlight Trail. Number 3 is a 37-foot front yard setback variance from the required 40 feet to erect a 6-foot privacy fence 3 feet from the front property line along Starlight Trail on the east. Number 4 is a 7-foot front yard setback variance from the required 10 feet to erect a 6-foot privacy fence 3 feet from the side property line to the south. Article 27, Section 27.03G2. The 5th variance is corner clearance requirement variances to erect a 6-foot fence at the intersection of a driveway and a road right-of-way to the north and the south. Do we have a petitioner? Come on up if you would, please. Okay, so far. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Alfred, last name Vuctalai, for the own the property 2005 Bell Mountain. I was here once before and I brought some photos. If you guys see it, I have postponed it because I see I was going to deny them. And I have 2 neighbors that have 6-foot fence. The one on my right and I have one on the left. They both have 6-foot fence, so I don't know why it's going on with my fence.
Did you say you have some material that you'd like us to see?
Yes.
Come on, bring it up if you would. Okay. I apologize for asking this. Are you the same gentleman that came the last
Yes, sir.
time? So you were here. Have you made any changes between the last time and this time?
I talked to him and what changes? They both have easement. I give them 35 foot of the property already, so both properties have easement from my property. So if the guy from the road and my right is not 40 feet from the road, how you expect me to go 40 feet from the road?
Well, the only,
Or the clearance and at the left side of the road, what's the road named?
Starlight?
Yeah, that road is there, the blocking, they make the road too small for them. Is that what the road you talk about, the clearance? Because I don't see no other clearance. I have nothing to do with their clearance, because they are behind my property. And they have easement to go to their property. To do the clearance is their property, is those 2 neighbors behind me. So I have nothing to do with their clearance.
What I would have bet it was on, and somebody correct me, Mr. Goodlow, if you're aware of it, I would have bet the corner clearance issue was at Starlight and Bald Mountain at the corner right there, because you come down Starlight, you don't see anything coming from what would be your left until you're into the intersection.
I got the photos, you can see everything, because my property ends to the roads, and I cut my property like this, so you can see everything. The mailboxes are out, the cable box, I left everything out.
I'm speaking specifically about cars coming down the road from, like, would be leaving your neighbors coming towards.
Yeah, they can see everything, fine,
Well,
I have no problem with that.
I drove it again the other day, and with respects, I have to disagree. That's all I can tell you. Board members, please.
Because in Starlight, I put the 6-foot fence, the lady have a 6-foot fence over there by the end of the road. So those 6-foot fence are better than mine, or what are you saying?
Well, what I always say when somebody brings something like this up, they can say, my neighbor's got a big pole barn, why can't I have one? And I always tell them, I don't know what the rules were then, I don't know when it went in, I don't know whether they had variances, I don't know anything about it. We're here to look at your property and your case and the rules as they are written today.
Okay, but all the neighbors around have 6-foot fence, that means,
Again, I can't speak to that, I don't know the history of it.
but who's supposed to know if we don't find out? Where am I supposed to go to find out, so what is the history, or how can I have a 6-foot fence?
Mr. Naskis?
Sir, each case is unique. We don't know the reasons why they were able to get one approved. We don't know what the unique circumstances that they had are. We don't know what their practical difficulty is. I think what we're seeing here is that we aren't seeing what we call a practical difficulty.
Okay.
In other words, a reason why it's necessary to have a 6-foot fence surrounding your property. We don't see any problem with the property itself, the geography of the property that would require it. We don't see any issues with any other practical difficulties that we can see, other than we know you desire to have the fence. But unless the variance is based on a practical difficulty not created by you, that would require or at least indicate the necessity for a 6-foot fence. And I think, at least from my point of view, that's not what I'm seeing. I'm not finding a practical difficulty.
No, I understand, but when I get up in the morning, I can see everybody's 6-foot fence. Well, I cannot have a 6-foot fence, but they can have a 6-foot fence because they have a special, unique.
Exactly, that's the rule, that's the ordinance, that unless there is a practical difficulty that is unique to your property, that's what we base that variance on. I hope I'm explaining that correctly.
Anybody else with concerns, board members? Do we have anybody that came specifically tonight to speak to this matter? Okay. Sir, if you'd surrender the mic a minute, come on up, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Phyllis Slate, and I'm at 2013 Starlight. The fence, if I am coming out of my home to leave, I can't see around the corner to see if anybody's coming down my driveway. It is a one-vehicle, basically street, because it's an easement. So that is difficulty, and if I'm coming home, I can't see around the corner. And I have a neighbor who has young children who like to play it's a private drive. So for me, it's very, very difficult because of this fence. I don't go fast, I never have, because I do know there are children in the neighborhood. The gentleman who is asking for this fence, I don't know if you know this or not, but supposedly he has a construction business. So why he's putting up a fence without having approval, I don't know why, and he did continue even after having someone come out and ask him to stop. After the meeting last time, he ended up putting up more fence. I don't know why this is legal. I just hope that this gets settled this evening. I know when the prior owner asked for the variance, it was denied. Excuse me. I don't know why it would be any different tonight unless he has some kind of better reasoning for it.
Okay, thank you for your input. Anybody else? Okay, petitioner, come back up, please. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say to the board?
Yeah, the one she says she cannot see when she drive to her driveway because there are trees there and my 6-foot fence are not bothering nobody. I can cut it down to 4-foot fence and it's still, she's not gonna see nothing because that's one-way street. So that one doesn't bother because it's their driveway, so they have to figure it out. When I asked the neighbor, I offered when I was cutting some bushes and some stuff, and she said, please, can you not cut them? They are in my property, but I left them outside the gates to give them more clearance. And I asked them to cut them down and remove them so they can drive better and see better to go through. And the lady's like, I like the way they turn some white flowers, and she said, no, please. I was like, okay, I don't cut them. But even 4-foot fence, how's she gonna see around the corner turning? Because I have my rights to put the 4-foot fence on my property line. So those steel property fence, the steel 4-foot, they're ugly. I don't like them. So I have my rights to change them to something else. Even if it's 4-foot, it's gonna be wood. She's not gonna be able to see anything from driving in a small car over a 4-foot fence and around the corner. How's she gonna see the other car coming in?
Well, the difference will be if it's a 4-foot fence, we take no position on it because it is allowed under ordinance, correct, Mr. Goodlow?
Yes.
Okay. I have to echo myself what Mrs. Zanaska said earlier. I don't see a practical difficulty there. I don't see anything particular to your property that requires you to have a 6-foot fence around. It makes it look like a compound, and I'll be completely honest, it is everything that I dislike about those fences, just the way it looks. I came in, I turned into the driveway of the house, and it was like, well, if a gate came behind me, it would be a compound. And that's a look that the ordinance has addressed so that it doesn't get loose all over the township. And we look, as she said, at every case separately. Again, I'm only one voting member. I don't see a practical difficulty.
No, I understand, because she said I put some more fence up. I'm gonna put all the fence up. If I have to cut them to 4-foot, I'll cut them to 4-foot, but I'm gonna put my fence up because they're my fence.
Okay.
You know, it doesn't mean I'm not gonna put fence, because I don't put fence on her size yet, but I'm gonna move all them steel fence, I'm gonna put wood fence. Because I'm gonna do it 4-foot fence, 4-foot fence. You say I can have trees in front of them? It's good enough for me.
Just one piece of advice, I'd be very sure that anything that you do is within ordinance guidelines, because if it isn't, you will look like it's punitive, like you're trying to get back at your neighbors, and that's
No,
never
no,
a
I
good
respect my neighbor, I have nothing against them, no, nobody.
thing. Okay, good. Mr. Flood?
Mr. Chairman. Sir, I see you filed your application on June 1st with the Planning and Zoning Department. Says you've owned the property for 2 months, back on June 1st?
3 months now.
So you are new to the community?
No, I'm from Lake Orion since 2015. I own a condo down the block.
I'm talking about this piece of property right now.
Yes, sir.
On your affidavit, you said 2 months on your application.
Yes.
So-
Yes, I'm new to that neighborhood.
Because, like your neighbor said before, the lady before who had owned that property, I sat in that case.
Well, what I hear the neighborhood, too much,
Sir,
You're not the judge.
we have ordinances, and I have to abide by the ordinances. Everyone up here has to too.
because the previous.
You're allowed a 4-foot fence.
The previous owner
That's it.
inherited, they have old issues. I have nothing to do with that. I'm not the old owner, and I have nothing to do with the old owner, and God bless her soul, because she's not living no more, so I have nothing to do with her. I asked for
Now,
myself.
you have put a fence up illegally against the township ordinance.
Yes, I came here, I paid for the permit. If I'm allowed, I'm allowed. If I'm not, I'm not.
So we have to make a ruling now on how to, on this case. I am not in favor of a stockade fence completely on the lot line. You can put that fence up if you meet all the setback requirements, because you're asking for all these variances.
Yeah, but my neighbor, the right, he said in my property, and he told me to move 40 foot back, but he have a special order when he got the 6-foot fence. Is that what you asked, you told me?
I'm telling you that you can put that fence up if you meet all the setback requirements, which is 40 feet on the front yard, 37 feet, 7 feet. That's your choice. You cannot put it on the lot line without approval.
That's
of
what I'm
the
saying,
variance.
like, my neighbor, he have it right on
I
the
don't-
property line.
I'm not talking about your neighbor. I'm talking about this case specifically here.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on in your neighborhood.
That's
I'm
what-
just making a
that's what
ruling
we
here
base
on this.
We base in a neighborhood because we live in a neighborhood. So if you're not worried about my neighbor, I'm worried because I live there.
Right.
I'm worried because he have a 6-foot fence right in my face.
I can't rule on your neighbor. I'm
No,
ruling
it's
on this
okay,
case
I'm
only.
not saying to rule anything in my
So
neighbor.
I am not in favor of this case either, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
That's my last comment.
Mr. Goodlow, do you have something?
That neighbor did receive a variance for their fence.
Anything further, but Mr. Kirby? No, sir. No. Mr. Walker?
One last comment. Sir,
Francis?
your home is it's a lovely home
Thank you.
and a lovely yard. It's a nice piece of property. I know you have children
Trying to
that you're
make it
concerned
nice.
about, and in my experience as a resident, as a parent, as an educator, a 4-foot fence is very sufficient to keep your children safe.
Another question, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
For the record, do the 4-foot fence, any dog can jump because they have dogs in the neighborhood? Do the dogs can jump the 4-foot
Then
fence?
you need to address that with the owner of the dog. In other words, we don't put fences up to take care of the problem of someone else's dog. If their dog is coming into your property, you need to call the animal
I'm worried about
control.
nobody's dog. I'm worried about my safety of my kids.
Yeah.
For their dogs. I cannot go in the neighborhood and ask everybody to secure their dogs and lock their dogs and sell their dogs.
That's their responsibility, absolutely.
Yeah, so, I know it's a 4-foot fence, any dog can jump them, and I have a lot of kids, that's why I think I need a 6-foot fence for specialty, and there is no specialty, it's wood fence, it's not something special.
I understand.
A 4-foot fence, that's okay, I have no issue with that.
Anything additional by the board? We can entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Mr. Naskis.
In the matter of ZBA case AB 2022-25, Armando Vitkich, forgive me for pronouncing your name wrong, 2005 Ball Mountain Road, parcel ID 09-24-100-007. I move that the petitioner's request for 5 variances from zoning ordinance 78, zoned R1, Article 27, Section 2702A4, and Article 27, Section 2705, H2. Number 1, a 40-foot front yard setback variance from the required 40-foot to erect a 6-foot privacy fence 0 feet from the road of right-of-way line along Bald Mountain Road West. Number 2, a 37-foot front yard setback variance from the required 40 feet to erect a 6-foot privacy fence 3 feet from the front property line along Starlight Trail North. 3, a 37-foot front yard setback variance from the required 40 feet to erect a 6-foot privacy fence 3 feet from the front property line along Starlight Trail East. 4, a 7-foot side yard setback variance from the required 10 feet to erect a 6-foot privacy fence 3 feet from the side yard line south. And Article 27, Section 2703, G2. Number 5, a corner variance to erect a corner clearance requirement variance to erect a 6-foot fence at the intersection of a driveway and a road right-of-way north and south be denied because the petitioner did not, in this case, demonstrate that the followed standards for variances have been met. The petitioner did not demonstrate a practical difficulty, either by anything that is relevant to the property itself. The petitioner did not establish any unique or exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property that do not apply generally to other properties in the same area. The variance is not necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by the property owner. And the granting of the variance or modifications could be detrimental to the surrounding area, possibly limiting visual visibility to incoming and outgoing traffic. It will, and that, I will stop there.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mrs. Danaskis and supported by Mr. Kirby. Any further discussion by the board? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Diane Danaskis,
Yes.
Tony Kirby,
Yes.
Mike Flood,
Yes.
Don Walker,
Yes.
Dan Durham.
Yes. Your request has been denied. I would suggest you get with Mr. Goodloe, and he can advise you on the next step. You can keep as you've said, and you've heard him say, you can keep the fence in place at 4 feet high. But he will possibly have some expectation of how long that should take. That's now between you and him. It's not on this board's desk anymore. Oh, the photos, sure. Where'd they wind up?
Right here.
Come on up. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we'll meet him. Okay. You have my number. Thank you.
Next up, we have AB 2022-28, Georgette Dibb at 563 Oakland Street, Sidwell 09-11-316-023, postponed from the July 25th meeting. The petitioner seeking two variances from zoning ordinance 78, zoned R3, Article 27, Section 27.02A4, and Article 27, Section 27.05H2, a 10-foot side yard setback variance from the required 10 feet to erect a 6-foot privacy fence 0 feet from the side property line to the east, and a 10-foot rear yard setback variance from the required 10 feet to erect a 6-foot privacy fence from the rear property line to the south. The applicant, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Georgette Dibb.
Okay, you were here once before. What changed, if anything?
We had our survey done. So they started surveying last week. They came in today and finished staking it, this morning, actually. And so now that we know where the property line is, we kind of have more to go with. Because last time we were here, we weren't sure where the definitive property line was. There was a dispute between that. So now that we have had the survey out, we, spent the thousands to get it done. They've staked it this morning. We have pictures of that. I actually emailed Mr. Goodloe just now because they just sent it to me at like 4 p.m. So I forwarded it to Mr. Goodloe, so he has it as well.
You don't seem sad, so this must have changed your application some?
No, I actually just got married on Saturday too, so there's nothing
that's
that
good
can make
reason.
me sad today.
That's right, I was trying to get you to postpone it further so you didn't have to interrupt your honeymoon, I remember. Okay, I remember.
Yeah.
So your presentation as it was given last time, it is still what you stand by?
Yes, mostly now, we learned that the rear of the property, where the one variance was requested, the current fence that's there is actually on our property. And our property line is behind their fence quite a few feet. So I don't even know that we technically need a variance anymore if we just put it up to the current fence that's there, because it's almost 10 feet from our property line behind the fence.
How did somebody miss it that far?
Maybe
No
3
idea.
or 4 feet, but yeah, there's clearly a stake.
Yeah.
Feet behind, they just did it this morning, and
So
it's,
they staked it, yeah, I was like, where, because there was a flag on the fence, and I was confused, I'm like, is that the property? He's always like, it's actually behind it. So if you stand, I have to tiptoe over, look over the fence, you can see it.
which we're not complaining about, we just obviously aren't gonna go
Right.
through their fence to go.
Gotcha.
So we'll just, go up to the current fence that's there, if that's,
Mr. Goodloe, have you seen the pictures?
I'm actually looking at it right now on there.
Okay, well, board members.
I have video and pictures if anybody needs, this was
Yeah, I
all very
have-
last second, so I
Sorry,
apologize.
I'd be in favor of letting Mr. Goodloe see it, and if he'll, with his expertise, if he sees it and agrees that you don't need that other variance, we'll take it off. Or look at taking it off.
I'd be interested in seeing what the total distance and the total variance would be at that point.
Yeah, because also, they, if they want to continue that fence to the front, currently it's, doesn't have one, so they'd still need that variance for 10 foot if they want to connect to the one in the rear property line. You follow me?
Because that one wouldn't be 10 feet off the back property.
Exactly. So they would still require that variance, Chair.
Okay. So it would be the same then?
Yeah.
sounds like.
Unless we remove their fence and start over.
It looks like they have an accurate number of their depth on their side of their house now as well. And that chain link fence appears to crisscross it.
Now, can you briefly, Mr. Kirby wasn't with us the last time, can you briefly go over your reasoning why you want that fence on the east side?
So we want a privacy fence. We have 2 dogs and we have a family, and we have, we just want the privacy. We've had issues with the neighbor, and we've had to file some documentation, and we've had the cops called, and we've called the cops, and there's several times. It's just it's always been a dispute with the neighbors, so we just want our privacy. One of the reasons we wanted the variance was there was always a dispute between the properties with trees and shrubs and leaves and all of the above. So we were trying to get as close to their property line as possible, so that we didn't have all of that gap between to have all the different disputes and all the different issues. There's a utility pole, so even if we can't technically go on the property line, there's too many trees and there's a utility pole with the support beams that we can't get around or in between to put up the privacy fence. So our plan was to do it just right before the utility pole, where there was still an access point to get to the utility pole. So if anyone had to come and do, whatever they do with that stuff, they still had access to it, but we weren't too far away from the property line.
Have you submitted accurate drawings about what you want to do?
Yes, we still would like to put it exactly where it was staked last time. I believe some of you have driven out to the property and saw where it was staked, and we still would like to put it exactly there, which isn't on the property line, but it isn't 10 feet away. So I believe it's about, 4 feet or so?
Right around 3, 4.
It's about 4 or 5
anywhere
feet
3 to
from the
5
property
feet
line.
off the property line.
I imagine, go ahead, I'm
No,
sorry.
I cut you off, I'm sorry. Once again, the only reason why we're picking that random spot that we staked, the fence that we're talking about that's in question goes on our property line, on theirs, on and off. It goes in between trees that are on their property and on ours. But the main focus of why we staked it where we staked it that you guys saw was because that electrical pole is for their house with the support beams for that electrical pole, all adding, more problems with weaving a fence. So the only way we could get a straight fence and not be on the property line was to do the 4 feet or wherever we're at, where we can go straight shot and not be all crooked like the pictures you guys see. And we avoid their electrical pole, the supports for it, and it does what we were hoping.
If you're successful, how far forward do you intend to bring that fence?
Exactly where you saw it staked. It comes short of the house, way short of the house, actually.
It's probably about 80 feet from the street.
I purposely put it right in front of my condenser, because I just got a 5-ton unit put in, which is loud. So the 5-ton unit is tucked on the side of the house, not at the front. It is literally a foot in front of that.
Yeah.
And so the furthest point of the house, it's,
All the meters would still be on the outside of the fence.
yeah, all the
They'd
meters
still
are
be-
out, accessible.
would-
It's still well beyond the front of our house.
So like the front of the house, and there's like a little L shape to the house. It would go at the back of that little L, or I don't know how.
Okay,
Show
I'm
them a picture. Yeah, actually, I got a video. What am I doing? Hold on.
I'm certain somebody asked you this the last time. It was probably me. I kind of hope that PD is able to handle neighborhood issues, and it doesn't need to come into this building to try to handle something that,
No, absolutely. We still want the privacy fence, either way.
We
Okay.
tried going that route. That's the only reason.
okay,
We
Can I
still
show you
be
the
putting up
picture?
the privacy fence either way.
please, come on.
Everything's original where you left. The only difference is that's what they staked for us today.
Mm-hmm.
These are the stakes you guys saw. There's the new 5-ton. There's the post I buried. And then my house comes way out further than that. You can see the post right there?
Yep.
My house comes out further.
So you will not be coming forward to the house?
Will not.
No, no, no.
That is a fence post right there already planted, ready to go. And then that's when this whole issue came up, and I have a whole pallet of my fence sitting in my backyard for months.
Okay.
So I can pass this around.
Anybody else would like to see that? I was looking
You're
over
more
your
than welcome to
shoulder.
take it out of my hand, too.
No, it's okay.
So that's the new stake, that's the only thing you haven't
Say it
seen
comes
is
up.
that.
Uh-huh.
Just wanted on the
These are
record
the
that it
stakes.
wasn't coming
You
forward.
guys all drove by and saw, they're
Right.
harder to see right there.
Okay,
They go where you see there to where that is,
okay.
and then my house comes out much further than that, but I was trying to conceal the sound of that new condenser.
Mr. Walker, you have anything right now?
No.
Do we have any public comment? Anybody that came specifically to speak to this matter? Okay, folks, if you'd surrender the mic for a minute and let these folks come up. Good evening.
Hi, my name's Monica Carter. I live at 551 Oakland Drive. And I'm just a little confused on to what's being talked about. My fence is on the property line. Are they going over the property line or on the property line?
I believe their request, and board members, please correct me if I'm mistaken, I believe their request is to come to the property line. Now, the question might be, they might believe that based on their survey, the property line is in a different place than you do. I don't know.
My property, my survey indicates my yard is 90 feet wide.
Okay.
Fence to fence. That fence is my fence. That's where my property ends.
Well,
That's what I see on the survey. The survey shows it's right on the property line.
okay. I guess, and I'll give you an extra minute because I'm talking instead of you. I guess it's similar to what Mr. Goodlow said about the other fence applicant. Our situation tonight is to rule on specifically a 6-foot fence on a property line. If the property line is different in your mind than it is in theirs, then it will become a civil matter between the two of you. That will take this board out of it.
Okay?
We have the responsibility to rule on their requests. They had the right to bring their request. So if there's a dispute about where the property line is, that will be a civil dispute between you and them.
Okay, well, my survey indicates my fence is on the property line. They're asking for a 4-foot, to put the fence 4 feet away from the property line. My concern is, who's going to take care of that property between my property line and the vacant 4 feet? Because in between, there's fences, there's trees, and a telephone pole. There's more than enough room for them to put their privacy fence. I've lived in that house almost 20 years, and I have maintained that backyard because it's been a jungle the entire time I've lived there. There was more, an adequate amount of room for them to put a privacy fence on the property line.
Okay? Anything additional for us? I mean, do you have anything else?
No, that's just my concern, is if it's not put on the property line and it's set back where they currently have their stakes, who's gonna maintain that between my fence and that property, that privacy fence?
All right, I'll tell you what, as soon as they get back up here, that'll be the first thing I ask them.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else for this case? Okay, come on back up, applicants, please. Okay, now, you, and I don't want to get into a turn and talk and you talk, I don't want to get into that. You heard the concerns.
Yes.
The property line, your fence is going to go on it or the other side of it, or?
The other side of it, where it's currently staked, which is about 4 feet. We can't go on the property line. If we go on the property line, we have to not only remove all of the trees and the current fence that's already there, which is way more than we're willing to do, but we'd also have to remove a utility pole, which we obviously can't do. So if we want to go on the property line, we'd have to remove a whole bunch of stuff. I don't own that fence. That chain link fence was there when he purchased the property years ago. We can't just remove a chain link fence and put something else in place of it.
Okay, that 4-foot gap that they're talking about, who takes care of it?
We will.
My property.
It's our property.
For sure we take care of it.
Okay, on this record, being recorded, I hear you say you will be responsible for that.
Absolutely.
100%.
Very good. Board members, Ms. Kirby?
I'm reading it, they're looking for a 10-yard setback, but now I'm hearing it's not a true 10-yard setback, it's a 6-yard setback.
10 foot, sorry, not yards.
Or pardon me, 10-foot. That's my fault, I misspoke. They're asking for a 10-foot, but it's not really a 10-foot. Now they're going to move it in 4 foot, so it's going to be a 6-foot. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to judge this without.
When we first came in, we weren't sure where the property line was. We thought where we had it staked was our property line. We just learned today, this morning, where our actual property line is. So when we applied for it back in June, I believe, we weren't aware. We were going based off the township photo that we were sent via email, and that was where we thought the property line was. So now we learned this morning where the actual property line is, so.
So do we need to modify this request?
It's at the petitioner's request, for sure.
You can ask for a lesser variance than the one that you've requested. You
Yes.
can never ask for more, or you can never ask for
May we-
more, but you can ask for less.
Can we do that today, or do we have to do it
Well, you can
different?
do that today.
May we ask for a lesser variance of only 6 feet
Exactly, what is it, 3
from the property line? So that's
From the
a
fence.
6-foot variance.
from the fence?
Right, so from there to there is 3 feet?
Yeah.
So then
to
we'd
the
be
stake.
asking for a 7-foot variance.
Now I'm confused. I'm just
Sorry.
looking to go through, just where the stakes originally were, and we left.
Or we,
Where the stakes currently are is 3 feet from the property line, so that would be a 7-foot variance.
that would be your side yard setback variance?
Yes.
Yes.
The rear yard will remain 10.
I don't believe it's, I don't even know now that we know.
Don't say you don't know.
Rear yard would remain
3
10,
feet.
yes.
They will remain 10?
It would if they want to connect it to that back.
And we just want to
Okay,
connect
so
it. We're
that's what I
fine
thought, it
with
was
their
10
fence
feet.
being on our
So the
property.
rear yard would
Would be 10
remain.
feet, correct.
Okay.
Okay, so the
Sorry,
top
the
one,
verbiage is getting to me.
Top one would become a 7 and the other one would remain 10.
yes. Board members have any concerns with that? Ms. Flood? Any concerns with moving that down to a
No
7?
comment.
Okay. Did I hear, I wasn't looking at you, was that you? Yes. You did have your public comment. No, I'm sorry. The rules don't allow it. Now, I'll give you a ton of slack because we haven't got much going on. The other young lady there did not speak. If she would like a couple minutes public comment, we can do that. Would you like, no, you got to stop. I would like to, I'm sorry. Okay, then, again, surrender the mic, please. Come up, introduce yourself, and understand that this is a little bit outside the rules, but that's okay, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself,
My name's Allison Carter.
okay?
I would just like to mention how 7 years we've been dealing with him having no yard, not maintaining it. I actually have one picture I pulled up here. I have several more, but, of trees that they don't clean up, leaves that they don't clean up. So how are they gonna say that they're gonna maintain that property, not to mention, that's in between the fences, not to mention, before, when we came in here, she feared for her life because of my dog. So why is she willing to put her life in jeopardy to put herself in between those two fences?
That wasn't mentioned tonight, and I didn't, not
Oh,
taking
no,
that into
I'm
consideration.
completely aware that their whole story switched. And now it's something completely different.
Well, they're gonna maintain the property because you heard him say it on the record, and the building official who runs the ordinance men also heard him say it.
But sir, it's not the case. And the text messages that they brought up the last time, I have proof of them saying that they will remove those garbage trees off of their property, that we were willing to work together to put up this privacy fence. Then they just obligated themselves to put up this fence. Well, we both want the fence. Both want the privacy, but we want it in the right way. Where do you go and you see a 4-foot gap from fence line to fence line?
As long as it's maintained, it is not this board's business.
Okay,
I'm sorry. I know that's not what you want to hear.
so the
I don't know if
township's
these
just gonna
folks are
have
going to be successful. They may not be. I don't know. I just have one vote.
Typically, it's 10 feet that you have a gap on the side that,
That would be true with a 6-foot fence.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the gallery? Nothing else. Come on back up for the last time, please. Anything additional from the board for these folks?
May I just ask for a clarification?
Absolutely.
If we are not granted our 7-foot variance, we can still put up our fence. It just has to be 10 feet from the property line, correct?
Yes?
And there is no law that prevents us from doing that 10 feet from the property line.
She's correct, Ms. Goodlow, right?
Perfect. So if our 7-foot variance is not approved, we can still go 10 feet.
Yes.
So it would be in their best interest with their concerns for us to get it approved for the 7 feet.
I don't want to even consider what I think is in their best interest.
Okay.
Everybody's
Just
got
wanted
their own ideas.
clarification.
Anything additional? Nothing additional, and if applicants have nothing else, we can entertain a motion. Do we have anybody willing to consider a motion?
My motion just might fall on the wrong side of the fence here, no pun intended.
Well, it will at least be appointed discussion. We appear to be stalled.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Walker.
in the matter of ZBA case number AB 202228, Georgette Gibb, 563 Oakland Street, Sidwell 0911316023. I move that the petitioner's request for 2 variances from zoning ordinance number 78, zoned R3, section, Article 27, section 27.02, A4, and Article 27, section 27.05H2, 1, a 10-foot side yard setback variance from the required 10-foot to erect a 6-foot privacy fence, 0 feet from the, is that the one that's, no,
Yeah, that's the one that's 7.
okay, that's still where it is. You're leaving that at the 10-foot request?
No, we asked to change it.
Yeah, the first one is going to be a 7-foot request from the side yard. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
That's why you guys have to check up on me. Let me change that to number 1, a 7-foot side yard setback variance from the required 10 feet to erect a, oh, that's not right.
Yeah, it is.
No, 3 feet from the property line? That's what we're looking for?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. A 7-foot side yard setback variance from the required 10 feet to erect a 6-foot privacy fence 3 feet from the side property line to the east, and 2, a 10-foot rear yard setback variance from the required 10 feet to erect a 6-foot property fence 0 feet from the property line south be denied because the petitioner did not demonstrate that the following standards for variances have been met in this case. The petitioner did not demonstrate any practical difficulties that ran right to the property itself. The petitioner did not establish unique or exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved that do not apply to other properties in the same district or zoning, and the variance is not necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other property owners in that area.
May I ask a question?
Support.
Not while we're working. We have a motion on the floor by Mr. Walker and supported by Mr. Flood. Do we have any additional comment by the board? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mike Flood,
Yes.
Tony Kirby,
Yes.
Don Walker,
Yes.
Diane Denaskus,
Yes.
Dan Durham.
Yes, your request is denied. Next case. AB 2022-34, BACA Baca Systems at 101 Premier Drive, Sidwell 09-345-451-001. Petitioner seeking 4 variances from zoning ordinance 78, zoned IP, Article 27, Article 18, Section 18.03, I-1, 2. Number 1, a variance to allow a covered trash receptacle dumpster to be located in the side yard to the north rather than the required rear yard. Number 2 is a variance to omit the required masonry brick-type walls and the opaque lockable gate around the covered trash receptacle. Article 27, Section 27.19, B, 2, 3, and 4. Number 3 is a variance to allow accessory/outdoor storage to be located in the side yard to the east rather than to the required rear yard. And the next one is a variance to omit the 8-foot chain link fencing around and screening around the accessory outdoor storage. Do we have an applicant? Come on up. Introduce yourself, please.
Andrew Russo, representing Baca Systems.
First question, which direction does that building address off?
It is off of the west, off of Premier Drive.
Hence your problem. How big of a rear yard do you have there?
There is no usable rear yard. You can walk, there's like the fire exit's on the back, but it's maybe about 8 feet of grass, and then it's a large incline up about 20 feet. So it's impossible to even have dumpsters in the back.
How long have you been there?
We had partial occupancy, I believe, starting around 2017, and now we've taken over the entire building.
Thank you. So your feel is what has brought it to the attention of the township? What happened?
Yeah, so I guess a little backstory. So we've moved in 2017. We've slowly taken over more and more of the building. We truly have outgrown that building right now. So I don't know if you're familiar with the property on Brown Road, right where, there's the new development right next to FedEx, which is gonna, what's the name of the company?
Essays or something like that?
Yeah, ESIS Automation. We've actually just purchased the property right next to it, which is in Orion Township. So we're gonna be developing our next facility there, where we're gonna move everything over to, which would remove our Auburn Hills location and would move from here to there. Hopefully we'll break ground by end of year or beginning of next year. So that's the backstory on it. So what brought this all up though was last year the fire marshal came, and it was because the FDC has to be visible from the street. So that's kind of what started it, and then it's turned into, okay, we have to get site plan changes, and then, well, the dumpster can't even go in the back, so that's kind of how we got to here. We're trying to follow the process.
So you're doing business, and this is just my opinion, me asking you, you're doing business and strict interpretation of the ordinance would require you not to do business at that building. Fair?
Correct.
Thank you. Board members.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you
Mr.
get a little
Walker.
backstory. They were in front of the planning commission, and that's, I think, why they're here today, is because they were denied their request, the site plan in front of the planning commission because of these issues. And that's why they're here to see what this board thinks of those issues.
Thank you.
Am I saying that?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
And one thing, really quick, just, we are not here to ask to put a bunch of fences up. So little change from the past couple months. We're not asking for fences. It makes it any bit easier.
Mr. Flood.
Mr. Chairman. And I read the whole thing, all the minutes and everything from the planning commission. I appreciate that being in our packet, because you had a good backdrop on that. Very familiar with that Premier Drive over there. If you remember, I think 2 buildings to the east, we granted a side yard dumpster with an enclosure, because at that time, they had it inside the building, and the fire marshal didn't want it inside the building. And because of the way that property runs in the back, there's no backyard property except with that 20-foot hill. What was confusing when I went over there is, you have an existing dumpster and a dumpster enclosure already on that property, and I think that's the number 1 here, the variance. To be located in side yard north rather than the rear yard. Because then the next one says they want to omit the required brick wall and all that and lockable gate. I'm going, what are they doing, trying to take that out of there? Then I realized what's going on. Are we talking the compactor and the compactor roll-off and the 20-yard open top, is that what they're considering, all that?
Those are the trash cans. So we cannot use a flip top like the flip style dumpster, because the actual trash companies cannot physically pick it up, because we test stone like granite quartz material. So it gets too heavy and the hydraulics can't lift it, so it has to be using a roll-off. And we have too much garbage and cardboard to go into even the flip top. We would fill it up every day.
So this is what we're trying to address, that compactor and the roll-off for the compactor and the open top for the compactor, not the existing dumpster
The existing dumpsters just,
enclosure in the back. And I see you got pallets or something inside there.
they put pallets in there trying to keep it somewhat out.
When you move, is that going with you or is that staying with the building?
The compactor,
Yes.
I don't know if the building owns it. It's been there as long as we've been there. We just took over service of having, Republic Waste empty it.
So when you bought the building, that was already in place?
That's been there since we've been in the building.
Okay. This is what, because once we grant a variance, it stays with the property. If you move and sell that building or anybody else comes in there, that whatever variance is granted stays with that building.
Correct, and I've worked with the landlord, Moses, I have the letter from him stating that I would come here to represent the building and the building's interests.
Right.
So he's fully on board with.
That clears things up for me, because I'm going, wait a minute, we've already got a dumpster sitting in an enclosure, and they're addressing what has been put in there, which they should have came before the planning commission, whenever that was put in there years ago.
Yeah,
We got the cart, the horse behind the cart.
I think I had asked that during the planning commission before. I was asking, hey, I mean, I don't know how that was there. Was there a variance? I don't believe a variance was granted that I'm aware of for it. I think it just was there because it's feasibly not possible to use the rear of the building, because it's actually, the rear is almost another side yard, because Lapeer is probably more visible than even Premier Drive when you think about it. And then the other variance that we're asking for is we have the stone slabs where we have the A-frames outside with the stone slabs on them. And we feasibly just don't have room right now as we're trying to move to a new building in the township. So the variance that we're asking for is to have the dumpsters on the side where they currently are, be able to store the stone slabs outside, and to not put a fence around them, because we've got quotes for the fencing. It's almost $70,000. That's $70,000 we could put in to put fencing that lives there forever with the building. Or we could put $70,000 to having really great new landscaping out front at the new building, which is what everyone sees entering to the township.
If I may intercede, sir, money has no object on these variances whatsoever, not one penny.
That's why I'm saying we'd spend it either way.
What I'm looking at is that if we grant a variance, it's going to stay with that property.
If I may, you can also put a timeline on that variance request. A certain timeline, you could say it's good for 2 years, good for 3 years, depending on what the applicant says, how long they'd be there. Because what you grant here is, obviously, they've outgrown it and they have a ton of stuff in the yard. We're going to allow accessory storage out here without a fence, basically, for the interim, we could say, rather than full-time.
Would it be proper to put a time limit or to the end of their occupancy, whichever comes first?
Yeah, that's up to the board, but I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that that is an option.
Thank you.
So it won't become permanent. So the variance would not become permanent with the property. It would only be until a specific
Yes,
set of circumstances.
time that this board sees fit to, grant it towards, and they can always come back and extend it, or if they wanted to, or whatnot.
So in other words, if they sell the building, then it's the new building's, the new owner's responsibility to spend $70,000 to screen that in.
Yeah, exactly.
You're passing the buck.
Yeah, well, or they wouldn't have to if, when you'd have outdoor storage.
In my opinion, haven't been on, and I remember the last case in the fire marshal, I've discussed this with the fire marshal. We don't want those compactors inside the building, because they do catch on fire a lot.
No.
That's why they want those outside, which is what we did at General Motors too. We did that all the time. To me,
And typically, we don't want outdoor storage without being fenced in.
exactly, and that should be fenced. What you can do is you can put a rolling gate in there. You can put a roll, there's room enough to put a rolling gate across the whole front there. Hide that, and then when they want to come in and use it,
We can't have that with the FDC. The fire marshal already declined to have any type of fencing covering the FDC with the hydrant in the back.
All right, I'm looking at the building, I'm standing on Premier looking at the building, which is the front. Where is the FDC? Is it around the corner where the dumpster enclosure
Correct.
is?
I can show you.
Please, I've got plans, but you've got it there.
So, this is where the FDC is, right here, on the rear of the building. So this is the two compactors, and the FDC's here, and that's the fire hydrant. So
And they've got to be able to get to it quick, and they can't have it.
Back of the fire hydrant in, that's, so we can't have any gate in the front because the FDC has to be accessible.
right, right. So you have to move the FDC if you want to keep your compactor.
You talk about
Location.
money, go ahead and
Yeah.
move one of those things.
They already had us put in a booster pump, which was, I think, like
Yeah.
$10,000 or $12,000 for a booster because of the city water pressure. It's too high at night, which it charges the system
Yep.
and it makes it take too long to be, not a plumbing expert, but that's the situation with that. So I don't know if it's feasible. They didn't like they did any fencing, so.
So the compactor and those open tops created all this problem.
Pretty much, yeah.
But-
The other thing is that putting a fence even around that is half impractical of trying to actually dump something into the open top, as well as trying, when they come in to remove them, because they have you put a fence that's, say, 2 feet wider on the sides, trying to have one of the truck drivers with a garbage truck backing up and perfectly lining it up left and right, straight in. We'll see how long it takes until they take the fence or the building wall.
Okay, one, go back to the mic if you would.
Actually, you need to take a bay out. Off the one of it, take a bay out.
Well, having shown us the FDC and the hydrant, having done it many, many times myself personally, you come rolling in on a fire truck in the middle of the night on an alarm with a spotlight to show you the way, you're gonna be looking for it, and you need to be able to see it easy. Seeing it easy and getting hooked up fast could be the difference between that building being there the next day with some damage or the roof being where the floor used to be. Just comment.
And you already got storage in that area hindering your access to that back there already.
Right now, if you if you were to take a rope, I think about 26 feet wide, and you were to walk back, you could have 2 people holding it tight and be able to walk back with it. So with the slabs that are there, if you were to have 2 people walking back to that area, so you could easily back a truck up, even 2, 27.3 feet.
Do we have anybody in the audience who came to speak specifically to this matter?
The neighbor did come over, the neighbor who the property adjoins with that we're asking for, Derma Manufacturing, and they asked us about the variance that we were asking for, and we explained that it's pretty much pretty much nothing different, other than we would add striping to the ground, if it's approved, and they declined to come because they didn't want to waste time, so, just mentioning that.
I personally have run out of things to say. Board members, if you've got anything more?
Me too, I've said my piece.
No public comment. If the board is out of things, we can entertain a motion. I think we've got folks working on it. The silence isn't a bad thing.
I'm indifferent.
Well, if you're gonna do a timeframe, what kind of timeframe are you looking at?
We're actively right now trying to get the other building, they're going through the site plans of planning out what the site plans can be there, and then we're gonna be coming across the zoning board with actually, I believe it'd be the zoning board with the building department submitting the plans for what we'd like to do at the other site. So it's as fast as we can get a building. We would do anything almost to be in a bigger building right now. It strains us every day, being constrained in the building. So 2 years probably is what we realistically expect at a maximum, but we're hoping to start building by the end of the year or early next year.
If you break ground by the end of the year, you'll be up before next year's out one.
You'd hope, but no one predicted COVID, supply chain. I don't want to promise anything that, for all we know, the siding panels, they'll go on back order for 6 months and you'll be sitting there with a foundation and no walls.
The crystal ball is kind of foggy now, you're right.
So it's difficult to promise anything. 2 years, I think, is a realistic, decent timeframe to think
That's a long
of.
time frame.
But
Don, the planning commission, is it usually, what, a year? They have to come back and resubmit within a year
Yes,
if they don't do a site, if they don't put a shovel in the ground stuff?
yes.
Then they just have to come back and resubmit again. I don't like going out 2 years on something like that for a variance, would you?
If this board saw fit to grant you 1 year with the requirement that if you're still there, you come back and do this again, how would you feel about that?
I think that's acceptable.
Thank you.
That kind of keeps us in compliance with all our other things we do on both the PC and CBA.
So they come back and request an extension.
And I don't want to stick up for these guys too much, but I remember the planning commission, in that what they're going to do, they're not moving out of town. They're staying in the township. The new building's in the township, and it's, so we're kind of leaning to try to help them as best we can, as long we did it within the ordinance.
Well, I looked, speaking only for myself, I looked at the site, I saw the storage, I looked where I thought your backyard should be, and it wasn't possible for you to do what you needed to do. So, well, they're asking for what seems to be, to be minor variances to make their business possible to continue. So I didn't see any issue with it personally, but that's just one vote.
I tend to side with you. My biggest concern was the outdoor storage without fencing. That's, I mean, the first two variances, quite honestly, I have zero issue with. It's the outdoor storage without fencing that I have an issue with, but if this board, my opinion is if we saw fit to give them a 12-month and let them come back in 12 months, I wouldn't really see a problem with that. They're staying in the township, like you said. They are trying to comply, and it's a limited time frame. Just my opinion.
Sounds fair.
Now, would we need them to agree to the timetable, or is that just something we put in as we're making the motion?
Put it in as you make the motion.
My turn again?
I'm happy to let you have the turn. I'm trying to figure out the wording.
Mr. Walker.
Mr. Chair,
It's right here.
in the matter of ZBA case AB 20, I'll try to get this one right the first time. 202234 Backup Systems, 102 Premier Drive, Citywal number 0935451-001. I move that the petitioner's request for 4 variances from zoning ordinance number 78, zoned IP, Article 27, Section 18.3, I-1, 2, 1, a variance to allow a covered trash receptacle dumpster to be located in the side yard north rather than the required rear yard. 2, a variance to omit the required masonry brick-type walls and opaque lockable gate around the covered trash receptacle dumpster. And Article 27, Section 27, 19B234, 3, a variance to allow accessory/outdoor storage to be located in the side yard east rather than the required rear yard. And 4, a variance to omit the required 8-foot chain link fencing and screening around the accessory/outdoor storage be granted. On the wrong page, I almost said denied. Hold on. Because the petitioner does demonstrate that the following standards for variances have been met in this case, in that they set forth facts which show that in this case, the petitioner does show the following practical difficulty. Of all things, this, when we talk about how much practical difficulty means in granting these variances, and it has to go to the property, nothing could be, to me, stronger than relating to the property itself. This is related only to this property because of its unique characteristics, and it's not related to general conditions in property in the area. The following are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved that did not apply generally to other properties in the same district or zone. They indicated that because of the shape of the property and the FTC and various other requirements, that these variances would be necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the substantial property right possessed by other property owners in the same area. The granting of this variance or modification will not be material detrimental to the public welfare or materially injure to the property or to improvements in such a zone or property which the property is located. In addition, one of the terms of the granting of the variance for the second two variances at least, it will be for a period of 1 year. And at the end of that 1 year, if the petitioners have not completed their business at this location and moved on to the next location, they will be forced to come back here and to either renew or get a new variance in 1 year, which would tie into the requirements that they were asked to do by the Planning Commission.
Support.
I have a motion by Mr. Walker, supported by Mr. Kirby. Anything additional discussion by the board? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Diane Danaskas?
Yes.
Tony Kirby?
Yes.
Don Walker?
Yes.
Mike Foot?
Yes.
Dan Darrow.
Yes. You're granted. You're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is case AB 2022-35 at 3850 Joslin Road, Sidwell 09-28-376-031. The petitioner is seeking 15 variances from zoning ordinance 78, zone GB, article 14, section 14.02A. Number one is a 66-foot setback variance from the required 100-foot from residential property to build a building with drive-through 34 feet from the west property line. Number two is a 32-foot setback variance from the required 32-foot setback variance from the required 50 feet from residential property for a drive-through maneuvering lane to be 18 feet from residential property. Article 27, section 14.03C3. Number three is a 22-foot side yard setback variance from the required 30 feet along residential property for parking spaces to be located 8 feet from the north property line. And they have Article 14, section 14.03I1. Number four is a variance to allow a covered trash receptacle dumpster to be located in a side yard to the north. And that's, again, Article 20. The next one is Article 14.03J1. A variance to allow a loading and unloading area to be in a side yard adjacent to residential property. Number six is a variance to allow a loading and unloading area to be in a front yard along Hammersley Road, and they have Article 14, section 14.04. Number seven, a 2.42 foot building height variance from the maximum height of 25 feet for the building to be 27.42 feet high. 8 is an 18-foot side yard setback variance from the required 20 feet for a propane tank, a structure, to be 2 feet from the side property line on the north. Number 9, a 24-foot landscape, Article 27, section 27.04. Number 9 is a 24-foot landscape greenbelt width variance from the required 30 feet for the landscape greenbelt to be 6 feet along the north property line. Number 10 is a 25-foot landscape green belt width variance from the required 30 feet for the landscape green belt to be 5 foot along the west property line, Article 27, Section 2704A4. Number 11 is a 20-foot green belt width variance from the required 20-foot green belt between the road right-of-way and parking for 0 feet green belt along the south and east sides, Article 27, Section 27.05A4. Number 12 is a variance of 7 trees from Joslin Road and 7 trees from Hammersley to have 0 trees along the rights-of-way, Joslin Road, Hammersley Road. And it has Article 27, 27.05A6. 13 is a variance to omit 2 required trees from the interior landscaping requirements of 1 tree per 200 feet of interior landscape space. Number 14 is a 66-foot variance for interior landscape areas from the required 400 feet to have a 334 square feet of interior landscape areas. And number 15 is a 6-foot variance from the required 10 feet for interior landscape area to be 4 foot wide. Do we have a petitioner?
Bruce Calhoun, Creekwood Architecture, representing Keith Ford, the owner. First off, I'd like to apologize ahead of time to the maker of the motion for denial or approval. That's going to take a minute with all these variances. What we're looking to do is we're looking to redevelop the existing facility at this location. We have an existing building on the location, existing gasoline pumps, and existing drives that also service the facility. The setbacks that we're requiring would allow us to build a larger building on the facility with a lease space, similar to other facilities that we have built for Mr. Ford. The drive-through lane circulates around the back side of the building and has the adequate number of cars for that. The parking ordinance is met with the exception of the 3 cars in the setback on the north side, just because we couldn't fit any more onto the site without going into the setback with that. I'd like to also say that this site now is a existing site that was developed quite a while ago, and it just surface drains straight across the site into the road. With this development, per the Planning Commission engineers, we would be improving it not only for the looks of the site, but also with the stormwater detention that would be required and the environmental protection for the stormwater that would be required too. The item number 1, the 100-foot setback down to 66 foot. If you notice, the existing building is also within that setback too. We're asking to enlarge the building to a size similar to what we have on other facilities.
Can I interrupt your flow for just a moment?
Sure.
By way of question, drive-through lane, to serve what?
The lease space.
That you don't know what the lease space will entail yet?
No. We're looking at probably a tropical smoothie or a coffee shop.
Maneuvering lanes and drive-throughs tend to be noise intensive, and this is pushed up pretty close to residential property?
What we're looking at there is we have a 6-foot masonry wall that it goes along both those property lines. And we feel that helps screen that. And on the north side, there's just really dense trees that run along there. And we're proposing arborvitae that'll run on there's a 5-foot buffer from the wall to the property line. And we're going to place arborvitaes all the way along those.
You know if they plan to continue to fill propane there?
Excuse me?
Do they plan to continue to fill propane there?
They would like to, yes.
So you're planning to increase everything on the same basic piece of ground?
Exactly.
And have those great big propane tanks there also?
I believe there's only one.
It's a big one, though. Okay, thank you.
It's a big pig.
That's one of the variances. So this the setback for the building, of course, we're adding a larger building, and we cannot push it any further toward the road due to the existing pumps and the circulation lanes in the parking.
One more second, I apologize. To the board members, I would urge that when the gentleman gets to something in the presentation that has come to your attention, you interrupt him, because if we wait for him to get through everything, you'll forget what you wanted to know further up. So feel free. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, the drive-through variance 32-foot, because we're placing the drive-through lane in the back of the building. And again, we do have that screen wall running across there. Parking in the setback, that is due to the, we don't have enough room on the site as it is for additional parking. We have it on the side yard setback as parallel parking. Dumpster in the side yard, we have the dumpster, it's actually behind the building, but it is adjacent to the building, so it is visible, but it is behind the building. We can't put it directly behind the building being screened due to the drive-through lane for the drive-through. Loading in the side yard, we're trying to keep the loading out of the parking circulation. We don't want it in the front because of those issues, and that's by the dumpster. Alternate location for number 6, for loading on the roadside. We didn't think that was a very good place to put it, but it's an alternate location, and they wanted to put it on there just as an option. Building height variance, it's the peak that exceeds the 2'6", and that goes to the mean height of the peak, and we exceed that by 2'6". The propane tank, again, it's existing now, and we're just pushing it a little bit closer, but it still is going to be screened by that masonry screen wall. 24-foot landscape to the north, again, is because of the circulation and the parking and expansion of the pumps. 25-foot landscape reduction to the west is due to the building of the building and the drive-through lane, due to where the pumps and everything exist right now. The right-of-way, of course, with the circulation drives and the pump locations, we just can't get any landscaping out in the front whatsoever and still maintain circulation to the existing pumps. Same with the trees required. Since we can't do the landscape green belt, we can't provide the trees. That gives us the tree reduction. The reduction in circulation, the interior landscaping is due to circulation issues. And again, the landscape trees for the interior landscaping is a result of that also. The width of the landscape from 6 or down to 4 foot is due to the parking required along that side. For circulation, we can't get any tighter than that without reducing the size of the building or the pumps. So with that in mind, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to improve an existing site. The site right now is it just doesn't serve him very well at all. It doesn't give him enough room to do much of anything on there. And with the requirements that we would have to improve the site even a little, it would take a lot. So that's where we are. Thank you.
Board members,
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Flood.
Sir, how long has Mr. Ford owned that property?
I am not sure. I believe I've been working on this for him for over 3 years, so I believe it's been over 10, 15 years.
Reason I asked that, it was omitted on the application.
Oh, okay.
And I take that very seriously when they don't fill these applications out properly.
And I believe that was probably my fault because I didn't get the information from him to put on the application.
Okay, thank you, sir. Very familiar with that area, born and raised out here. When I see 15 variances, to me, that's trying to shove 10 pounds of potatoes into a 5-pound sack. And I know you have to abide by today's standards for the ordinances. What really concerns me is that it's an older, established residential area right there to the west and to the north. As far as the green belts and things like that go, I don't have a problem so much with that. I do have a problem, though, when you really stretch these setbacks from the residential properties. And I don't like that propane tank being there next to a residential housing either, any closer than it already is, when it exists. But that's just my statement. I'm just one voting member of this board. That's all I got to say.
And if I could address that, the owner just wants to, he's got the propane now and he just wanted to keep it. But he fully understands if it's something he can't do, if he can't get that part of the variance. And also just note, if you looked at the minutes of the planning commission, I believe there was only 2 people that spoke to this from the neighborhood, and their only concerns were for environmental to the lake runoff, water runoff for the lakes and that. And I reassured them that if we do develop this, we will be protecting the lakes quite a bit by adding the retention and the aqua swirl environmental protection.
Where are you going to put retention?
The retention would be at the south side of the site. The entire site slopes north to south, and we would basically take the area and lower it down a little bit, put the catch basin a little lower. It would go into that system, and we'd actually have to have a pump system to pump it up and out.
Okay.
It would be all underground storage.
Okay. Do we have anybody in the public? Come on up. Introduce yourself and let us know what you think.
Hello, Scott Gabriel, 941 Joslin. It's not that close to that. It's up by the library. My only big concern is being an ex-frame and the propane tank next to a residential freaks me out. And the drive-through. I'm a restaurant guy. I've put in restaurants all over the world. Drive-throughs are noisy. They're very noisy. Not just because they're talking on a speaker and all that, but you have people with the radios going, the lights are going, kids are yelling, and if you're talking coffee shop or something like that where it's going to go late, currently that business shuts down, don't quote me, but fairly early, 6 or 7 or something like that. You put a drive-through that's going to go around that, those lights are still going to go up over that 6-foot wall. That noise is definitely going to go over that 6-foot wall. And as you stated, those residents around there tend to be fairly older. It's a quiet neighborhood. It's a very quiet neighborhood. So if they eliminated the drive-through, I have absolutely no problem with improving that poor little gas station.
Thank you. Come on up, introduce your, no, the other gentleman coming behind you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Rich Wong, 2300 Hammersley. Basically direct west, 1, 2, 3, I'm 3 doors away from the existing gas station. There's already a lot of noise in the area. The car wash, which is on the other side of Hammersley, we get a lot of beeping from the 1-minute timer all summer long. The beep, it's amazing how that penetrates all the trees and everything behind the car wash. Every Tuesday morning, there's violent crashes. We work from home these days since COVID, and the violent crashes of the dumpsters every Tuesday morning just about jerks my wife right out of her chair, and myself too. And we had a drive-through on top of that. I share this gentleman's objections as well. The drive-through on top, the vehicles running and folks talking and so on might be a bit much. Everything else sounds great other than the propane tank. So just my humble opinion for the board.
Appreciate it.
All I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, come on back up. And tell us again who you are.
Bruce Calhoun, Creekwood Architecture.
Okay, board members.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Kirby.
I've got a real problem with that propane tank being 2 feet away from a residential zone. I have to echo the 2 gentlemen sitting out there that have objected. That, to me, just does not sound like it's in the best interest of the public safety. As far as the drive-through and the parking, they can be very noisy. These top 3 motions here where he's looking for a 66-foot variance for the drive-through, a 32-foot variance for the drive-through, and then a 22 variance on property parking. you are going to see lights over a 6-foot wall. You are going to hear the noise over a 6-foot wall here. And yes, they can put arborvitaes in, but it's going to go through that. I mean, those three, the drive-through and that propane tank are exactly what I have issues with. I agree with Mr. Flood on the greenbelt. I don't have an issue with variances there, but that drive-through and that propane tank makes me really question this.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, Mr. Daskis, anything?
Or if you do a drive-through, if you're granted a drive-through, and I realize you don't know what type of drive-through it will be, does the owner have an idea on the hours that will be operating?
Well, if it would be a coffee shop, it would be probably early morning, which I think you could put stipulations on that. As far as the hours of operation. And I think that would be something the planning commission would then put stipulations on. I think it goes back to them on that. But if there were stipulations on the hours that a coffee shop couldn't operate, then it wouldn't be a coffee shop. In his other facilities, he's got like a tropical smoothie, and that looks more like what he would try to get in there for a tenant. And the hours of operation would be a lot later in the day. And they usually typically don't go past, I don't know, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock.
Right.
I don't know, in the summertime, it might be a little longer, but I'm not sure.
And they tend to be less traffic.
A lot less traffic too, yes. And he's never gotten a coffee shop for any of his other facilities. But I just can't, say what
I
it
understand.
would be because I don't know.
I understand. Thank you.
But then the planning commission, on recommendation from you guys, I would imagine, could put stipulations on there.
Well, I didn't want to muddy the water too far before possible motion, but I would have to echo what Mr. Kirby said about the propane tank. I came out of the fire service 25 years. Do they blow up? No. Could they? Yes. What'll happen when they do? I wouldn't want to be living anywhere near them. So it's a possibility. And it's a possibility that could impact safety of the people in the area that we don't have to allow if there's changes
I could make
made.
it easy and take that right off. I agree with you.
And beyond that, I'm having a lot of difficulty with the idea of a drive-through. I've looked at that site, I've looked at it 3 times, and I see the wall and I see this green grass back there. So yeah, they've got some room to expand, but you're expanding the building. It almost seems like, and it's sort of what Mr. Flood mentioned earlier, this is what he wanted. He put the footprint down, this is what I want to do this. Well, you are now squeezing outside the site. Okay, well now you've got to come here and ask us to allow the outflow, the bigger things that I wonder how much you would have to reduce your project if you put everything within the site.
If we put everything within the site as far as the setbacks, we wouldn't be able to develop the site. The building itself wouldn't be large enough to even substantiate the construction of it. We wouldn't be able to do the drive-through at all.
And I'm only one voting member, and there's nobody up here that I haven't voted opposed to at one time or another over the years.
And I looked at also the lights as far as for the drive-through lane, and whether that drive-through lane was 100 feet back or 50 foot back, the cars are still going to be aiming directly toward that wall, and then they're going to be turning. 90% of the time while they're in that lane, they'll be heading out toward the road and heading out toward the other road. It's just the first come in that they make that. And they're also going to have those car lights coming in as they pull in that drive. And now, too, with the drives, we fully anticipate that once we go on back to the planning commission and we submit for all of our reviews with the road commission and drainage and all that stuff, that they will require us to close a couple of those drives. I would imagine it'd be the two nearest the intersection. So we would still have that drive coming in with the lights shining back toward that wall. And I had originally proposed trees running down that property line behind that screen wall, just screen it similar to what the other side is. If you look at that other side, if you've been by the site, it's just really screened well. And I wanted that same thing on this side. But there was mention at the planning commission with the leaves, that would be putting an undue burden on the property owners on the other side. So that's when we switched to arborvitae. And the arborvitae can get 20 feet tall. Most of them can be, I think, stipulated on the site plan that they started out at 8 feet high. So, and they do get pretty dense across at the spacing I have, it'll be just a solid hedge. So we're trying to do as best we can on that. There are options on the menu boards. They do have touchscreen menu boards now with no speakers. That could be a stipulation also. We would require, right now we got it stipulated that it'll meet the decibel levels required for the ordinance. But stipulations could be put on that it'd be a touchscreen only, or pre-order type of situation or something like that. There's a lot of things going on today that could eliminate that speaker.
In my mind at least, and it's just, again, just one mind, but in my mind, that would help a lot because you can't, no matter how hard you try, or no matter how hard the staff working that day try, they can't control the noise in that lane. There's people hollering back and forth over speakers, and as somebody else mentioned, the car radios and everything else. But that would help a lot if you took the speaker right out of the mix.
And that's something that I think, again, the planning commission has to rule on. It has to go back to them. They would have to do that, but I think it would be a recommendation coming from you.
Well,
Go back to them.
you have to bear in mind, you've got to get past this whole page of variances tonight to get back to the
I
planning
understand. I'm
commission.
just saying that I don't know how to achieve that without it going back to the planning commission with your recommendation.
Thank you.
Or if you can put a recommendation on it to the variance, I'm just not sure how that would work. Well, we would be open to it for sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Kirby.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Oh, do you have a question?
No, I have a question.
I'll go after you.
All right. If we approve it and we don't have stipulations in here, that variance is going to go through and then they can do what they want. If we put stipulations in here, there's nothing that says that the planning commission is going to agree with our stipulations as being good enough.
Well, that's why we have a planning commission person right here. What would be their feel, do you believe?
Well, I don't think you can conditionally grant any variances on any of these things. I mean, you can't. Like we put that extension on. The problem with this is that, I agree with the propane and the noise being the big issues, but this is overwhelming. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen 15 variance requests on one piece of property.
I've been doing this a long time too, and I've never proposed 15. It's just.
Fair enough. And then as I go through each one of them, so many of them are very big variances. I mean, you want 25 feet off the 30-foot. I mean, it's almost overwhelming to me. I'm not an engineer or an architect. I don't understand all the nuances, but it's so much.
Well, you got to understand too that a lot of the requests are overlapping. Because we can't do this, it leads into this, and because of.
I totally understand, but the problem is that they're still all there. There's still 15 variance requests. That's, I mean, what if we grant 3 of them and not the other, how is that gonna work? It's not gonna work, probably. So we have to grant them all or none? I'm not sure.
Well, I think you do have in talking with Tammy when we first brought this forward, she said that would be probably the case, that you would look at the variances and you may give us one, you may not give us all of them, like the propane. I can see by the comments tonight, that's going away. There's no way that's gonna happen. And that's fine. And possibly the parking over there, that would eliminate that variance over there. Planning Commission does have the ability to reduce the required parking within the site. And it would be just 3 parking spaces, and I can't really see anybody parking over there anyway. It's just, I don't think it would happen. I don't even think we need the parking that we have. It's just the ordinance required it. As far as the belt reductions on the back side, as you see it now, it's just all grass, just open grass. And we got the screen wall, and I've never, in a lot of other jurisdictions, and my own too, I chair the Planning Commission in Davis Township. A screen wall, you either have a green belt requirement or a screen wall. It's kind of a either or type of thing. But here we had both. So we were looking at, we do have the screen wall, and we're trying to, expand the site. So we kind of got to catch on that. As far as trees and the interior landscaping, it's just basically due to the existing pump locations, curb location, and parking required. We just can't get any more green on there without reducing what we're trying to do. The trash receptor, right now, it sits out in front of the building on the side without a screen enclosure at all. And we're trying to make it a lot better, that's for sure. We're trying to improve the site. And this is just our attempt to try to do that.
Had another comment, but I believe Mr. Flood was up next.
I appreciate that, sir. As I'm going through their checklist here on how we grant variances, number 1 is a practical difficulty. In this case here, I feel it is self-created. I think numerous have said that when you see 15 variances. Also, I'm looking at what is the unique circumstance conditions of this property? None. This GB's been there, that gas station's been there for however long. The only thing that's unique about it is it's such a small piece of property. And they're trying to jam all this stuff in there on this existing small piece of property. We can't expand the property. Only way you can do that is if he buys out neighbors and stuff. My main concern is, with any commercial venue, that's why we have our ordinances now, with these new projects going in. You have to protect the township taxpayer, both the residential and the gentleman who owns this property. He's entitled to run his service station like he has right now. He's perfectly permitted to do that. He's perfectly okay now to have that propane tank where he has it right now. Somewhere along the line, that was approved. Now they're trying to open up a new venue, which would probably make it better for that whole neighborhood over there, but you're trying to put too much into a small space. So I'm ready to make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Kirby, do you have something else?
Nope, that was just covered.
Mr. Walker? You have anything additional you'd like to?
The only thing I got is, I think this site is very unique for practical difficulty, just because it sits on 2 corners. It is an existing facility, and in order to expand the facility and make it practical to use, we have to have some variances to do it. So either we let it sit the way it is, and I don't know if he walks away from it or not, that's up to him, but we're just trying to make it nicer, that's all we're doing.
Understood, and whether he walks away from it or not would not have any bearing on what this
It
board.
would not, I'm just saying that, he's trying to stay there, he's trying to develop the existing building, make it nicer. And, trying to do the best he can is all I can say.
Understood. Anything additional from the board? If not, Mr. Wood, you said you're ready?
Okay, you guys saved the big, long one for me. I appreciate that. I was reading all the record. Oh, get my paperwork here straightened around here. In the matter of ZBA case AB 2022-35, 3850 Joslin Road, 3850, it's in there twice, 3850 Joslin Road, civil number 0928-376-031. I move that the petition request for 15 variances from zoning ordinance number 78, zone GB, Article 14, Section 14.02A1, a 66-foot setback variance from the required 100 feet from residential property to build a building with a drive-through 34 feet from the west property line. 2, a 32-foot setback variance from the required 50 feet from residential property for a drive-through maneuvering lane to be 18 feet from a residential property. Article 14, Section 14.03C3, a 22-foot side yard setback variance from required 30 feet along residential property for parking spaces to be located 8 feet from the north property line. Article 14, Section 14.03I1, a variance to allow a covered trash receptacle dumpster to be located in a side yard north. Article 14, Section 14.03J1, a variance to allow a loading and unloading area to be in a side yard adjacent to residential property. A variance to allow a loading and unloading area to be in a front yard, Hammersley Road. Article 14, Section 14.04, a 2.42-foot building height variance from the maximum height limit of 25 feet for the building to be 27.42 feet high, and an 18-foot side yard setback variance from the required 20 feet for a structure, propane tank, to be 2 feet from the side property line north. Article 27, Section 27.04, a 24-foot landscape greenbelt width variance from the required 30 feet for the landscape greenbelt width to be 6 feet along the north property line. A 25-foot landscape greenbelt width variance from the required 30 feet for the landscape greenbelt width to be 5 feet along the west property line. Article 27, Section 27.04A4, a 20-foot greenbelt width variance from the required 20 feet greenbelt between road right-of-way and parking for a 0 feet greenbelt along the south and east sides. Article 27, Section 27.05A4, a variance of 7 trees from Joslin Road and 7 trees from Hammersley Road to have 0 trees along the road right-of-ways of Joslin Road to Hammersley Road. Article 27, Section 27.05A6, a variance to omit 2 required trees from the interior landscape requirement of 1 tree per 200 square feet of interior landscape space. A 66 square foot variance for indoor landscape area from the required 400 square feet to have 334 square feet of interior landscape area. And number 15, a 6-foot variance from the required 10-foot for interior landscape area to be 4 foot wide. Be denied, because the petitioner did not demonstrate that the following standards for variances have been met in this case. The petitioner did not demonstrate practical difficulty because of the number of variances here is self-created. The petitioner did not establish unique or exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved that do not apply generally to other properties in the same district or zoning, because for today's standards, he's trying to put in too much in such a small area. Mainly, it pertains to the drive-through portion on this, of these variances. The variance is not necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property right possessed by other property in the same vicinity, because currently he is enjoying that property with a station, and he still can enjoy that property for the future. The granting of the variance or modification would be material detrimental to the public welfare or material interest in the property or to improvements in such zone or district in which the property is located based on the following findings of fact. All the setbacks requiring for the drive-through, for the loading, and for the propane tank would be detrimental to the surrounding neighbors. Further, based on the following findings of fact, this could impair an adequate supply of light or air to adjacent properties, not meeting the setback requirements. It could increase the congestion in public streets due to the drive-through. It could increase the danger of fire and danger of public safety due to that propane tank being moved closer to our residential property. It could adversely diminish or impair property values within the surrounding areas. or in other respects impair the public health, safety, comforts, morals, or welfare of the inhabitants of the Township of Orion.
Support.
We have a motion on the floor by Mr. Flood, supported by Mr. Kirby. Any further discussion by the board members? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Tony Kirby?
Yes.
Don Walker?
Yes.
Mike Flood? Mike Flood?
Yes. I thought you said Tony Cook.
Diane Denosis?
Yes.
Dan Darrow?
Yes, your request has been denied.
Now, can I come back for lesser variances?
I would say anything that you come back with would have to be better received by the board than this evening's was. You heard the hot spots.
I heard the hot spots, and I would have appreciated that they were looked at each one of the variances independently rather than just blanket, disproving all of them, especially when it was stated that there was no real major concern with a lot of the variances, just the drive-through and the propane. But now, we've been denied for everything, so it doesn't really give us an opportunity to redevelop. And I don't want to come back again and ask for 5 and be blanket shut down again.
Well, I think, but listening to the motion maker and to the gentleman that seconded it, and the discussion, I believe there was enough trouble throughout the entire request. I mean, if you would have gotten a greenbelt variance but nothing else, you wouldn't have gained anything. You had to have a certain number to walk away with to be able to move forward. I mean, you wrote the plans, you know that better than I do. And I just think there was enough chaff in the middle of the wheat where it just wasn't something the board was prepared to move forward with.
I mean, if we come back, I think I'd try to come back with no drive-through and with no propane. But if everything else was unpalatable, is there a reason to come back, I guess is what I'm trying to do. And I thought that's the way we were going, that, you know, okay, these are okay, but definitely not this and this, but it was just blankly shut down. Like, I was here and I was being disrespectful to you by asking for so many, and that's not the case whatsoever. We're just trying to develop an existing site.
Well, the board was looking at the ordinance book and trying to, not that you weren't, but trying to bear in mind that there are longtime residents that would be affected by this. If in my mind, again, just speaking for me, if the business can be happy and the neighbors can be happy, it's a wonderful thing. We need operating businesses. That's great. But if the business going in makes the neighbors unhappy, I have a hard time supporting it. And that's just me.
Yeah, and I think all the neighbors were happy with the exception of the propane and drive-through also.
If you come back, I would urge you to come back with a private list, put it in your pocket of things. This is my core. This is what I have to have.
Well, if I would have had that, then I shouldn't even have asked for the others at that point.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Kirby.
It is my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, but as presented, we have to vote on all of the variances that are on the sheet. We can't pick and choose what to vote on, or am I incorrect in that statement? Unless the petitioner withdraws one or modifies it.
Yeah, that's typically how I've handled in the past. Typically, a petitioner would take back a couple of variances in this
And
past.
given the option, I would have rescinded the drive-through and the propane. But I was not given that option.
Right now, you're sitting on a denial. I don't mean to be cold, but
I'm
that's.
just trying to look forward into the future, what my options are.
But if I'm coming back in your shoes, I'm coming back with a core list that I absolutely have to move forward. Then if I hear jabbering from up here that's gonna get in the way of it, look, I gotta have A, B, C, and D. We can discuss E, F, and G, and H, but I gotta have these. And I can't predict the future any better than anybody else can, but that may be helpful to you.
That would just be a hard thing to, I mean, I could present a site plan again with my minimums, but to have more than my minimums and say, I don't really need those, but I'd like to have them. Of course, I'm not.
Call
gonna
them bargaining chips. You don't have to tell us what your minimums are. Put them in your front pocket.
Oh,
And if it starts to get tight, then pull them up and tell us what they are.
I had those, we could have gotten away without the drive-through, especially since there was so much objection to it, and definitely the propane. And I don't know if that would have made the rest okay or not. I wasn't given that option, so.
This is gonna sound awful. You had every right to, hey, what about this? What if I throw this one away? You had the right to do that.
I did do that on the propane, but I wasn't.
Yeah, you did.
The
And
maker of the motion went before we got to the point where I could pull the drive-through away.
well, I don't personally see that you were not treated fairly.
No, I'm not saying I was.
If you
I'm really
disagree,
not.
I mean, you talk to planning and zoning about the next step tomorrow.
I was just looking, what's my option in the future, and I didn't want to bring something before you guys again that you're just gonna say, you know, what are you doing here again?
Every time something comes back, it's looked at fresh, every time. Especially if you can say there's been changes since last time, and this is what they are. Just telling you how the board operates.
Yeah, I just didn't want to come back and just.
Petitioners sometimes don't like it, the people in the audience often don't like it, but we try to operate one way all the time.
Exactly, and I'm just trying to represent the owner, but.
Understood.
Again, like I said, I chaired the planning commission, I just didn't want to disrespect you guys in any way, so.
I appreciate your attitude and your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we reached the point in our program. Next is public comment. You gentlemen were up once. If you want to come back up as part of public comment, which we have at the end of the program, you can come up and speak, and we listen. We don't answer questions at that point, but you can come and speak if you'd like to. Or not if you don't want to. That's okay, too.
Scott Gabriel, 941 Joslin. I just want to say thanks. I mean, you guys are professional. You were reclusing yourself from the one issue. It shows a high degree of professionalism that I'm kind of a political junkie that I haven't seen in other places. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Same, thanks for me as well. You already got my name and address,
But we don't know now.
Oh. Rich Wong, 2300 Hammersley, lived there since '07, quite happily, I may add, and I just appreciate you folks watching out for me. I felt kind of redundant coming up here saying exactly the same stuff you did, but maybe it was
No, it's
helpful in
important.
some way.
It's important. Thank you. Communications. Any multiple board servers got anything? Mr. Flood, Mr. Walker?
Just that we're going to have a fence committee meeting on Thursday.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
See what happens. And you got that committee? Member comments. Anybody got anything to say?
Have a safe and happy Labor Day.
There we
That's
go.
coming up, right?
Yeah.
That is.
So be safe.
I hope so. Mr. Walker?
I have a party invitation to extend. How's that? First, I
Wow.
want to thank the thank yous that we got from somebody today. What a refreshing change over the last couple of months of being blistered by everybody in the room about being incompetent and stupid. So we apparently either got more competent and got a lot smarter in the last couple of weeks, but I don't think so.
Well, it's just because I wasn't here.
That's because on September
we'll tell
10th,
Tony
I'm
said
having a party. You're all invited, and your friends are invited at my house. It's a Saturday, starting about 3 o'clock. Come on over for food and drink. Everybody. Everybody who works in the township.
But
is
just
invited
because
also.
party?
What?
Just because party?
Absolutely, just because.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. September 10th.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
I put it on Facebook today, too, of all crazy.
That'd be interesting.
You got anything, Mr. Goodlow?
You're not?
Me either, for a change. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're done. Thank you.
I have the question here.